Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so Joe Rogan had Shane Gillis on the podcast, and they got into some political stuff pretty early, even though Shane is relatively tentative about that type of stuff. I also imagine it's kind of built in when you're going on Joe Rogan's show. You know it's going to come up at some point, and Shane brings it up pretty early, and at first criticizing Trump from a pretty straightforward angle, but then later getting into some of the misinformation that has bolstered Trump and made it possible for the type of personality that they are lamenting to be in power in the first place. So that's kind of the thread that I want to draw here. And also just pointing out that at this point, Joe Rogan's show is just kind of a mash. It's like a bowl of mush of, you know, sort of right-wing talking points, and in some cases some more left-leaning moralizing, a little bit of the scolding of Trump and others that he on his program and other right-wingers have been extremely critical of over the years. So really there's just not that consistent of a thread. There's some consistency in terms of the talking points that he comes back to. He tends to say the same things and build on some of these different talking points that he brings up, issues that he brings up, you know, alongside this sort of kick in the sand type of routine that they're doing of like, oh shucks, this Trump guy is kind of rough, huh? You know, again, like I said, they're still reveling in some of the stuff that got him where he's at in the first place, and also using AI a lot to reference. Jamie is using Perplexity AI, I think, to like cross-reference a lot of these things. So the state of the Joe Rogan experience is quite bleak, and I want to get into all of that, but here's some clips from him and Shane talking to each other.
Despite all, President Trump would get reelected in a landslide and save America in all caps. That's a plaque in the White House.
He's not beating the dictator charges. This is like an African dictatorship.
Bro, this is crazy.
Changed the name. I think they're changing the name of the Kennedy Center to the Trump Kennedy Center.
Oh boy. Somebody needs to tell him, like, hey, this is not good. You can't do that. Because then other people could do that too. And then the White House stops being the White House and it becomes whoever is in its house, where he could just go crazy and say everybody else is a crook.
I don't think anyone's going to do what he's doing. I don't think there's... I mean, look,
God, I hope not, but it opens
course.
up... The problem is it opens up the door for someone on the left to do their version of it.
Who's going to be the Democrat? Who's next? Fucking Gavin Newsom? He's not going to fucking put up a plaque.
Of course he would. He copies everything that Trump does. He even tries to talk like Trump on Twitter. You don't think that he would put up plaques that talk about how corrupt Trump was and about how terrible, and he was quoted as lying over 5,000 times by Washington Post? You know,
Look at I think that's the photo for Joe Biden.
It's an auto pen?
Yeah.
Okay. That's so crazy. That's so crazy.
Yeah, but again, it's still funny. When he does crazy shit and it's funny, I like it.
Right. But the Rob Reiner thing is not funny, right?
No.
And that's like the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thinking. And when you see it with no empathy, that's when it's hard to like.
Yeah.
It seems like whenever something like that happens, where someone is happy that someone died, so many people just you feel so disappointed. You know, you just feel like it's so disappointing.
Yeah. Fucking ICE is making funny videos about deporting people.
Yeah.
And then like shit like this. It's like, damn, dude. That's fucking terrible.
They use Theo.
Yeah.
They use Theo in a totally unrelated clip that like some lady said, my friend has to leave the country. Will you make a video? I heard you got deported.
I mean, I knew that video existed before. Yeah. I'm the one editing the DHS.
It's just Theo being funny.
Yeah.
And they use that in this ICE thing. And Theo's like, whoa. And he had a really good response, too. He got them to take it down. But his response, see if you can find it, something that his opinions on immigration are much more nuanced.
I mean, that's the truth, though. It's like, yeah, sure, illegal immigration's, we should fix that.
Yeah.
don't fucking make it funny.
Yeah,
it's a
don't make
serious
funny
thing.
videos.
It's a
very
serious thing you're
serious
doing.
Yeah, why would you make it funny at all?
Yeah.
Like, is the thought like that'll make it popular on TikTok and it'll spread that way? Is that the thought, that it'll be that video will get people to want to sign
I think
up
a lot
for
of
ICE?
those people are obviously just weird fucking psychos that are in that world. I don't know.
I thought you're trying to get rid of like the worst people in the world. You're not trying to be entertaining. Like, the job is to get rid of the worst people in the world. Like, but that's what that's what we wanted. We wanted them to get rid of cartel members and terrorists, the worst people in the world. That's who we were hoping for.
Yeah.
But then it's like anybody. I bet they have quotas. I bet they're
Certainly.
told. They
Without a
I
doubt.
bet they do.
Without a doubt.
Whenever you give a quota to enforcing a law,
That's bad news.
You get into weird territory. That's when cops pull people over for bullshit.
Yeah. Tell me.
I feel like
Ohio.
once you are in America legally, shouldn't we treat you like a fucking American? Other than,
Certainly.
Yeah, other than you being able to vote yet. But once you're here legally,
they can vote.
we've agreed they can in a lot of
They can
places.
vote.
Turns out they can.
They're getting some votes in. They're getting a
Turns out
fucking ton
it's
of
not
votes.
zero.
Yeah.
It's not zero. Anybody who says it's zero is
All
fucking
right,
lying.
so they start with this angle of Trump went too far with the Rob Reiner thing. This is funny to me because Trump has gone too far a million billion times. It's just funny to watch them lib out over this because literally this is the whole selling point of Trump, is everything that you think is supposed to matter in terms of decorum, in terms of politeness, presidentiality. None of that matters. All that matters is whatever Trump wants to do, whatever he wants to say. It's been long enough that it seems like everybody should understand that by now. So it's interesting that the Rob Reiner thing is genuinely too far for a lot of people, probably just because of how gruesome the crime is. And although Rob Reiner was, anti-Trump publicly, loudly, he also, made some very beloved movies. And I think people's relationship with those movies transcends politics or whatever. But it's funny to watch Shane Gillis go, whoops. I think actually at that point they're talking about the plaques in the White House. Like I said, they're just kind of living out. A lot of people on the left have moved on from caring about this type of stuff because it's expected, to expect Trump to come in the second time and take it seriously or be some version of a serious politician is silly. And it's funny how Shane Gillis mentions like African dictators. He could have said anybody, really, because ultimately Trump is unique from any dictator we've ever seen, I would argue. Could be that we just see Trump under a microscope in a way that we haven't seen other dictators. But he is uniquely dumb. I think he's uniquely stupid in a very American way and narcissistic. And so it's like, that's just what we got. That's what we bought and paid for. And he's significantly more fascisty than he was the last time. So none of that should come as a surprise to these guys. They get into the stuff about immigration and how, it's cruel, or they said they were going after the major criminals, the worst people in the world, and this isn't what we wanted them to be doing. And they say this thing about empathy. Rogan says this thing about how, when you see somebody being so non-empathetic, it just makes it hard to support him, hard to like him. And again, that's just so funny because I cannot remember a single time that Trump didn't come off that way. And I get that he can be charming or that he can, say things you wouldn't expect him to say, or might maybe be thoughtful in a way you wouldn't expect. But at the end of the day, we all know this is a cruel person who's mostly empty in the ways that we view humans as being, interpersonal and understanding. Trump just doesn't seem to have any of that. And that's part of what makes him fascinating and I think exciting for some people that want to see a little bit more cruelty in politics. So ultimately, I don't think you boost Trump to the extent that Joe Rogan boosted him without wanting to see a little bit of that cruelty. You have to have bought into that a little bit, because otherwise, you reject Trump a long time ago. And I think that there are some people who maybe have come to overlook that aspect of Trump because of all of the things that they've heard from the other side about Democrats did this, Democrats did that, and it becomes this steady stream that they can kind of refer back to. It doesn't really matter where the information comes from, who said it, where they got it from, because ultimately it just serves as sort of that alternate reality that you can dip from when you need to. And Joe Rogan does that a little bit here, and I think illustrates how we've gotten to the point where such a cruel person is able to exercise power as much as he does. Because it's not just mean tweets about Rob Reiner. Frankly, I care a lot less about that, although rest in peace, Rob Reiner. You know, I'm more concerned about his cruelty towards people in this country, citizens, non-citizens, immigrants of different stripes. And Rogan is acknowledging that here, that people are being arrested at random. They're trying to meet quotas. That's the nature of this administration's policy. And there's a reason for that. The reason is because they've convinced a large amount of people that your enemy and the people they want to go after is this kind of super criminal, this mega terrorist from South America or Africa or wherever else that's coming here to destroy the fabric of society, and they're committing these horrific crimes and they're taking over the country. So that is the narrative that has been spun on the Joe Rogan Experience that essentially leads to the type of denigration of huge amounts of people that allow them to be rounded up and herded like cattle, deported, used for cheap labor. God knows what's happening to them in CCOT. And all of that was of pretty lucid concern to people who saw the way Trump's campaign was talking, you know, on the trail, trying to get themselves into office. They were talking about mass deportations. So to buy this lie of massive amounts of people in the country who are criminals, violent, murderous, gang-affiliated criminals, and so millions of people need to be deported. That is what has allowed for this policy where they're just rounding up random people, which Joe Rogan says that he dislikes. But when Elon Musk comes on his show and says this thing about how they're busing immigrants in, and they're, you know, literally busing people into places like Pennsylvania so that they can vote illegally. That's the claim that's being made on Joe Rogan's platform and many others. So that's the propaganda that has justified in many people's minds them rounding people up at random based on skin color. In some cases, U.S. citizens. I believe they've deported more than one U.S. citizen. And, you know, all under the premise that all of these people are criminals, even though many of them came in the legal way, did their best to do things the legal way, but now they're being lumped in as these dangerous criminals. This is the rhetorical trick that has been played on all of us, and that Rogan gave a lot of space for on his show. And it all comes down to a lack of empathy. And so, you know, this show is turning into a slop fest where it's like, you know, these half-cocked ideas that aren't well researched, and he's just throwing them out there. And it is meant to paint this picture of sort of centrism, but with that tinge of paranoia about what could really be going on. But as others have noted, there's really no curiosity left in this program. And really, this is just a guy who's trying to reinforce his increasingly right-wing worldview as things are changing in front of him. And he's realizing, as many people on the right do as they look at Trump, that they don't actually like this person and want to support him, but they feel they have no choice because they've been convinced that Democrats are doing things like, you know, mass importing people so that they will vote for Democrats. This is a lie that has been repeated many times and is very reinforced in people's minds. And it is dehumanizing rhetoric. People said that at the time. And even going back years when Joe Rogan was platforming stuff like that, people said this is dehumanizing rhetoric. The people who are saying that understand where this leads to and have been calling it out the entire time. And so while I don't think it necessarily makes a lot of sense to go point by point for everything that Joe Rogan says, although I try to do that sometimes, you know, it's just such a mash of different talking points that it's hard to do. And really, that's more so the job of Jamie, who is Joe Rogan's producer. That's the guy who always pulls stuff up on screen. And for the most part, he does that. He is willing to pull up stuff that contradicts whatever Joe is saying. But it's pretty rare. And I noticed that Rogan gets a lot of things past Jamie at this point. And it may be that Rogan has told Jamie only to pull things up when he tells him to. But it also seems to me that Jamie will go and fact check things. If Joe makes a big claim, Jamie will go and check if it's true and then pipe up. But again, a lot of stuff gets through that never gets fact checked. And I imagine that Jamie's in a difficult position because, you know, he has to look this stuff up in real time. By the time he does that, the conversation might have moved on. It's not the easiest thing to do. Plus, Rogan probably gets testy at him. I know there were rumors at one point that he was like going to too many left-wing sources or whatever. But look, the reality is, that's what he should be doing. In my opinion, that's his job, especially if this is supposed to be some kind of like centrist program, because Joe Rogan obviously swings far right sometimes. So it's like, you got to counter that strongly. And, you know, I think more frustration could be aimed at Jamie, frankly, because he's the only person really, other than whoever the guest is, that has the ability to take Joe Rogan to task in real time and has the tools to do that and the freedom to do that. And while I get that it's hard to do it on the fly, I also feel like Joe, the reason this is happening is because Joe spends whatever his free time is that he's scrolling on his phone or whatever, he's seeing this right-wing stuff, these right-wing talking points, he's engaging with that, and then he repeats it on the show as though it's just, you know, center of the road news. So anybody who's familiar with the landscape of things can point that out. I know Jamie is smart enough to know that. So the reality is he has to spend some time also knowing these things, because it's probably not that hard to predict the things that Joe Rogan is going to bring up. He does a lot of the same talking points at this point, but the thing that he likes to do is feed on whatever the new stuff is that's coming out. And that's where Jamie is usually a few steps behind. But if Jamie, as the producer who's responsible for doing these fact checks, was a little bit more prepared in terms of what is likely to come up on the program, it could create a little bit more of a sturdy undergirding for this show. But obviously, Joe pays him a bunch of money. Jamie is not interested in interrupting the gravy train. He's been working for the dude for a long time, and you know, he seems like an all right dude who does want to contradict some of Joe Rogan's misinformation, but at the same time he's like, hey, he pays me, so I'm gonna err on the side of, you know, it's just good for people to talk, man. It's good for people to have a place to talk. So I think with Joe Rogan's fascination with AI, his lack of discernment in terms of what information he takes in, he has brought up AI videos on the program multiple times, not realizing that they were AI, never having checked if they were AI. He talks about AI music and how cool it is. So he's becoming slopified. He has slop brain. And I think that I've mentioned this before with Rogan as an example, that certain types of media are going to increasingly go in that direction. I honestly think he'll probably bleed viewership the more he does that. But that has been the goal of the various right-wing propaganda machines over the last few years, is to pump a lot of stuff out there that will fill some of the space that contradicts, you know, mainstream, mostly science-backed narratives. They want to create an alternative stream of information that bolsters the talking points they want to be bolstered, like millions of illegal immigrants are voting in America. That's just not true. There's no metric by which that's true. That's why neither of these guys point to one. That would have been a great thing for Jamie to fact check. Instead, they get on this thing about the Georgia elections and the new information that has come out about that, essentially that there were several thousand ballots that didn't have poll worker signatures on the ballots. That's it. But Joe Rogan uses that to speculate for a good 5-10 minutes on what that could mean, and then they transition seamlessly into talking about illegal immigrants voting, even though you're talking about Fulton County, Georgia, which is largely black. So at this point, you're talking about throwing out black voters' votes because of some discrepancy in the poll counting, which was checked and audited multiple times since the 2020 election, which was 5 years ago. But ultimately, that's how Republicans cheat at elections, is they throw out votes from minority districts and say, you know, this is illegal, they voted illegally, there's this discrepancy, whatever. That's how they do it. So Rogan is, maliciously or not, he's completely whiffing the ball on that one. And, you know, I think that as the AI stuff infiltrates more and more, the opportunity that arises in that type of environment is that people are going to want to hear something new, and they're going to want to hear things that people haven't quite said before. And so I think Joe Rogan and even Trump benefited from that. You know, I think when they speak, people feel like you don't know what they're going to say next, and they're articulating things in a way that doesn't feel like it falls cleanly on one side or the other. And so, you know, Rogan, I think, is going too much in slop territory to maintain that most valuable aspect of what he does. But there will be opportunities into the future to, recapture some of the ground as the sane ones by speaking creatively and being willing to think of new ideas, because the AI stuff, as they're trying to pump their right-wing talking points into that to keep it, floating, it's going to get out there. People are going to repeat it, but it's not going to have the same appeal as something that is meant to be new and meant to apply directly to the problems that people can see in their real lives.
Me too close to, too much to do. The mission is too crucial. Shout it out from the rooftops until I lose vocals. Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity.